Imagine losing everything. Everything you worked for, everything your father built, ripped away in a single, brutal move by the one person you thought would protect it with you. Your own sister. And then, to add salt to the wound, to be mocked, dismissed, told you were never good enough. That's my story. Or at least the beginning of it. If you believe in good gestures, if you believe that karma eventually finds everyone, or even if you've just faced a moment where someone underestimated you, hit that like button. Seriously. And if you want to see how this story of betrayal and unexpected comebacks unfolds, if you believe that sometimes, just sometimes, the quiet one is the most dangerous, then you need to subscribe. Go ahead, subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from in the comments. I know you're a good person, and this story, this journey, is exactly for you. That's why you're here. The polished chrome of the conference room table reflected the cold, harsh reality of the situation. My sister, Ilera, stood at the head of the table, a predator in a power suit. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, which were fixed on me with a chilling lack of warmth. Elias, she began, her voice smooth, too smooth. As the new CEO of Sterling Corp, I've had to make some difficult decisions. I sat there, gripping the arms of my chair, my knuckles white. Difficult decisions. That's what she called dismantling my life's work. Our father, bless his soul, had built Sterling Corp from the ground up. He'd taught us both side by side the intricacies of the business, instilling in us a shared vision, a promise to uphold his legacy. He'd been gone less than 6 months, and already that promise felt like ash on my tongue. Your department, RD, she continued, clicking through a presentation on the massive screen behind her, has frankly underperformed. The numbers speak for themselves. We're stagnant, Elias. Our competitors are innovating, leaving us behind. Underperformed? Stagnant? I wanted to laugh, a bitter, hollow sound. Stagnant was the last thing we were. For the past year, I'd poured every ounce of my energy, every late night, every sacrificed weekend, into something revolutionary. A project so groundbreaking it would not only put Sterling Corp back on the map, but would redefine our entire industry. It was sitting almost complete in my private lab, a secret I was waiting for the perfect moment to reveal. A moment Ilera was ensuring would never come. She straightened her jacket, a subtle, almost imperceptible gesture of finality. Therefore, effective immediately, your position as Chief Innovation Officer is terminated. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Terminated. Just like that. 2 decades of dedication, of building, of dreaming alongside my father, reduced to a single, cold word. A few of the board members shifted uncomfortably. Some had known me since I was a kid, had watched me practically grow up in these offices. But they remained silent. Ilera had spent months consolidating her power, strategically placing her allies in key positions, sidelining anyone who might challenge her. The silence was deafening. You can't do this, Ilera. I finally managed, my voice low but steady. The rage was a slow burn in my gut, but I wouldn't let it show. Not here. Not now. I own 30% of this company. She smirked, a cruel twist of her lips. Actually, according to Dad's updated will, you own 20%. The board holds 30, and I control the remaining 50. The decision has already been made. She slid a document across the table, a severance agreement. The board has agreed to buy out your shares at current market value. I glanced at the figure. It was a pittance, an insultingly low amount that wouldn't even cover a fraction of what I'd invested. Not just financially, but emotionally in this company. I knew with chilling certainty that she'd been deliberately manipulating the stock price, tanking it for months, all leading up to this. This was calculated. This was planned. And if I refuse, I asked, my eyes locked on hers. Then we freeze you out, she replied, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. No vote, no influence, no salary. You'll be nothing but a silent partner, watching from the sidelines. She shrugged, a picture of feigned indifference. Take the money, Elias. It's more than you deserve. I stood up slowly, gathering my few personal items from the table with deliberate, measured movements. The weight of the key card in my pocket, the one to my private lab, felt strangely heavy, a small, tangible symbol of everything she thought she was taking from me, everything she thought I hadn't achieved. You know what's funny, Alara? I said, pausing at the door. She raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something that might have been curiosity in her eyes. Dad always said you were the smart one, I continued, a ghost of a smile touching my lips. The ruthless one. The one who would do anything to win. He was right, she said, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. No, I replied, the smile widening slightly as I thought of the prototype waiting for me, of the patents already filed under a shell company she didn't know about, of the contingency plans I'd put in place for this exact scenario. He wasn't. I walked out of Sterling Corp for the last time, the click of my shoes on the marble floor echoing in the sudden silence. Security followed me, their presence a not-so-subtle reminder that I was no longer welcome, making sure I didn't take anything more than my personal belongings. They needn't have bothered. Everything that truly mattered was already gone. In my car, parked a few blocks away, I pulled out my phone. There was only one call I needed to make. One person who could understand. Ms. Chun. I said into the receiver. It's Elias Vance. Remember that conversation we had a few months ago? About Phoenix? Jessica Chun, one of the most formidable and, frankly, terrifying venture capitalists in the tech world, was on the other end. I'd met her at a conference months ago, shared a few drinks, and perhaps unwisely vented about my frustrations at Sterling Corp, about Alara's increasingly cutthroat approach, and about the project I was working on. Jessica, with her sharp eyes and even sharper mind, had immediately seen the potential. She'd offered a lifeline, a contingency plan, as she called it, should the worst happen. The worst had just happened. There was a brief pause on the other end, then her voice, cool and collected, Mr. Vance. I've been expecting your call. It's time, I said, the words feeling both heavy and liberating. Excellent, she responded, a hint of steel in her tone. I'll have the preliminary paperwork ready in an hour. Does your prototype perform as promised? I smiled, a genuine smile this time, thinking of the AI system, Phoenix, that I'd poured my life into. The one Alara claimed didn't exist, the one she just effectively handed over to the highest bidder by forcing me out. Better than promised, I replied. Much better. And Victoria? Alara, I corrected, the name still feeling strange on my tongue. She fired me, and severely undervalued my shares in the process. Jessica's laugh was sharp and appreciative. Perfect. That makes the hostile takeover significantly more efficient. Are you ready to play hardball, Elias? I looked back at the gleaming tower of Sterling Corp, where Alara was no doubt already settling into my old office, probably picking out new furniture. More than ready, I said. Alara wants to talk about disappointing performance? Let's show her what real disappointment looks like. That night, my penthouse apartment felt less like a home and more like a war room. Documents were spread across the large, minimalist coffee table. Jessica had been true to her word. The paperwork outlining the first phase of our plan was already here. The plan was elegant in its simplicity, a mirror image of Alara's own ruthless tactics, but executed with precision and foresight she clearly lacked. My private company, the one I'd quietly established years ago and ironically named Phoenix Innovations, would partner with Jung Ventures, Jessica's firm. We would launch a competing product, powered by my AI system, creating immediate chaos in the market. Then, using the ensuing instability, we would begin quietly acquiring Sterling Corp stock through a network of shell companies. Alara thought she'd won by forcing me to sell my shares at a discount. She had no idea she'd just made the single biggest mistake of her life, practically gifting me the opportunity to buy her company out from under her. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. How could you let this happen? Alara was just trying to protect the company. I stared at the message, a wave of weariness washing over me. Mom, always the same, always favoring Alara, excusing her ruthlessness as good business sense while criticizing my more innovative, less conventional approach as risky. I deleted the message without responding. There was no point. She would never understand. Instead, I opened my laptop and began typing. An email to Sterling Corp's biggest clients. They deserved to know. To know that the products they'd been eagerly anticipating, the innovations they'd been promised, were about to come from a different source. Alara wanted a war. Fine. But she was about to learn that sometimes the quietest soldier is the most dangerous. And I had been very, very quiet. My prototype, the culmination of years of work, sat in its secure case, a silent promise of revolution. Alara thought she'd stripped me of everything, left me with nothing. She didn't realize she'd actually set me free. Free from the constraints of a company bogged down by tradition and fear of change. Free to build something new, something better. In 3 months, I would walk back into that boardroom. But this time, I wouldn't be the one getting fired. This time, I would own everything. The next 3 months were a blur of activity, a whirlwind of building and strategizing. While Alara was busy as I'd suspected, redecorating my old office at Sterling Corp, I was constructing her worst nightmare. My new headquarters occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming skyscraper across town. From the floor-to-ceiling windows, I had a perfect, unobstructed view of the Sterling Corp building, a constant, tangible reminder of what I was fighting for, of the legacy I intended to reclaim. The prototype testing is complete, Elias, Dr. Anya Sharma, my lead engineer, announced, entering my office with a confident stride. It's exceeding all benchmarks. Jiang Ventures is impressed would be an understatement. I smiled, reviewing the data on my tablet. The AI system, Phoenix, was performing even better in real-world simulations than it had in the lab. It would revolutionize how companies processed and utilized vast amounts of data, providing insights and efficiencies previously thought impossible. It was exactly what Sterling Corp's biggest clients had been begging for, and exactly what Alara had claimed I'd failed to create. What's the word from Sterling Corp? I asked, even though I already knew. I had sources everywhere now, loyal employees Alara had overlooked or dismissed, who kept me informed of the chaos unfolding within the company. Anya grinned. Chaos is a polite word for it. Their stock dropped another 15% this morning alone. Clients are abandoning ship left and right. Alara is trying to fast-track a competing product, but all their best engineers now work for us, I finished, a sense of grim satisfaction washing over me. I'd made sure of that. Within days of my forced departure, I'd reached out to the key members of my RD team, offering them not just better salaries and benefits, but something far more valuable. Creative freedom, the opportunity to work on truly innovative projects without the bureaucratic hurdles and fear of failure that had stifled them at Sterling Corporation. They jumped at the chance. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother. Alara is struggling. The board is asking questions. Please, Elias, stop whatever you're doing. I deleted it without a second thought. Alara had made her choice 3 months ago. Now, she could live with the consequences. My focus wasn't on stopping, it was on accelerating. Jessica Chin strode into my office, her sharp suit and even sharper smile indicating good news. We just acquired another 5% of Sterling Corp through our various shell companies, she announced, settling into a chair opposite my desk. That puts us at 18% total. I nodded, pulling up the ownership breakdown on the large monitor embedded in my wall. Alara still believed her 50% stake made her untouchable, invincible. She hadn't noticed the ground shifting beneath her feet, the slow, steady erosion of her power base. Speaking of shifting, Jessica continued, a hint of amusement in her voice. Your old friend, Mr. Harrison, from the board, reached out. He's ready to flip his voting shares to our side. Apparently, Alara's latest temper tantrum in the boardroom was the final straw. Arthur Harrison. I remembered him well. He'd been one of my father's closest friends and advisors, a man of integrity who had never approved of Alara's aggressive, almost hostile management style. His 10% stake would be crucial. Perfect timing, I said, a sense of anticipation building in my chest. The product launch is scheduled for next week. Once we officially unveil Phoenix Innovations' new AI system. Sterling Corp's stock will plummet, Jessica finished, her smile turning predatory. And we'll be ready to buy. The product launch was everything we had planned for and more. I stood on stage at the annual Global Tech Summit, the industry's most prestigious conference, presenting the AI system that I knew would change everything. The auditorium was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation. In the audience, I spotted several familiar faces. Members of the Sterling Corp board, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and unease. As I spoke, demonstrating the power and capabilities of Phoenix, their faces grew increasingly panicked. They were seeing in real time what they had lost, what Alara had so carelessly discarded. Alara herself was in the front row, a solitary figure in a sea of industry leaders. Her face was a mask of fury as she watched me unveil the innovation she had claimed I was incapable of creating. When I announced that Phoenix Innovations had already secured multi-million-dollar contracts with 3 of Sterling Corp's biggest clients she had recently alienated, she stormed out of the auditorium, a whirlwind of designer clothes and barely contained rage. The next morning, as predicted, Sterling Corp stock dropped precipitously, 40% in a single day. The market was reacting, finally recognizing the true value, or lack thereof, of the company under Alara's leadership. "Your sister is on line 1, my assistant announced later that day, her voice slightly hesitant. "She sounds upset." I let it ring through to voicemail. Alara had never bothered to truly listen to me, not when it mattered. Now it was my turn. Her voicemail was exactly what I expected. A torrent of threats, accusations, demands to know how I had stolen her clients. She still didn't understand. She didn't grasp that I hadn't stolen anything. She had driven them away herself. With her relentless focus on short-term profits over long-term innovation, her inability to see beyond the next quarterly report. The hostile takeover proceeded exactly as planned. As Sterling Corp's stock price continued to fall, our network of shell companies kept buying. Board members, seeing the inevitable, began selling their shares, conveniently, to buyers we controlled. Alara fought back, of course. She wasn't going down without a fight. She attempted to rush out competing products, pale imitations of Phoenix, developed by the engineers she had left. They were buggy, inefficient, and widely panned. She tried to sue me for patent infringement, but all my innovations were legally protected, filed under Phoenix Innovations long before she ever considered terminating me. She even tried to turn our parents against me. Not that she needed to. They had always taken her side. But this time it didn't matter. Their disapproval, which had once stung so deeply, now felt distant, irrelevant. I wasn't the quiet, accommodating sister anymore. I was a force to be reckoned with. 2 weeks before the final, decisive board meeting, I received an unexpected visitor. Arthur Harrison, his usually jovial face etched with concern, stood in my office doorway. He looked around, taking in the sleek design, the panoramic views, the quiet hum of innovation that permeated the space. He seemed both impressed and slightly amused. "Your father would be proud, Elias," he said, walking further into the room. "He always said you were the real innovator." Alara, she just couldn't see it. I raised an eyebrow, a hint of skepticism in my voice. "Is that why you're here, Arthur?" "To tell me Dad would approve." He shook his head. "No, Elias. I'm here to warn you. Alara knows she's losing control. She's desperate. She's planning something big for the board meeting. Something desperate. Let her try," I said calmly, leaning back in my chair. "Everything's already in motion. There's nothing she can do to stop it now." Arthur studied me for a long moment, a new respect in his eyes. "You know," he said softly, "she always thought you were the weak one, the quiet one who would never fight back." I smiled, thinking of all the quiet moments I'd spent not being weak, but planning this very outcome, anticipating every move Alara might make. "That," I said, my voice low, "was her first mistake." The night before the board meeting, I stood at my office window, looking out at the city lights. The Sterling Court building stood tall among them, a symbol of the past, a past I was about to change forever. Tomorrow, everything would change. My phone buzzed with a final text from Alara. "Whatever you're planning, it won't work. This is my company. You can't take it from me." I didn't bother responding. Instead, I opened my laptop and reviewed the final numbers one last time. Through our various shell companies and allied board members, we now controlled 49% of Sterling Corporation. Alara still believed her 50% stake made her invincible. She didn't know about the final piece of the puzzle. The 2% of shares our father had left in a trust with very specific, sealed instructions about how they were to be voted. Instructions that would be revealed tomorrow. Instructions that would tip the scales decisively in my favor. As I gathered my things to leave, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked different now. Stronger, sharper, more like the CEO I had become. Ilera had tried to erase me from our father's legacy, to pretend I had never contributed, had never mattered. Instead, she had given me the push I needed, the motivation to build something even greater, something entirely my own. Tomorrow, I would walk into that boardroom not as the brother she betrayed, but as the man who now controlled her fate. And this time, there would be no false regret, no fake sympathy. Just pure, cold, corporate justice. The morning of the board meeting, I arrived early at Sterling Corporation. The security guards, some of whom still remembered me from my childhood days, running through these halls, nodded respectfully as I passed. They had seen enough corporate drama over the years to know which way the wind was blowing. The boardroom looked exactly as it had 3 months ago, down to the gleaming chrome table where Ilera had tried to destroy my career. But today, different papers waited at each seat. Documents that would change everything. Ilera burst in at 8:55 a.m., her usual polished confidence slightly frayed around the edges. She faltered for just a moment when she saw me sitting calmly at the table, a faint smile on my face. "You're not supposed to be here," she snapped, her voice tight. "This is a closed board meeting." "Actually," Arthur Harrison spoke up from his seat, his voice steady, "Mr. Vance was officially invited as the CEO of Phoenix Innovations. He has some rather important business to discuss." Ilera's eyes narrowed as she took in the room. Several of her most reliable board allies were conspicuously absent, replaced by faces she didn't recognize. Representatives from our shell companies, legal counsel from Jiang Ventures. "What's going on?" she demanded, her voice rising, a note of panic creeping in. "Where's Theodore and Patricia?" "They sold their shares," I said softly, my voice cutting through the tense silence. "Along with most of your other allies. Check your phone, Ilera." The SEC filings had gone public just this morning, detailing the rapid acquisition of Sterling Corp stock by various holding companies. She fumbled for her phone, her face paling as she scrolled through the notifications. This is impossible. I control 50%. 50% isn't enough," Jessica Chin said, stepping into the doorway, her presence commanding immediate attention, making Ilera involuntarily take a step back. "When the rest of the board votes as a block." "And," I added, my voice firm, "your leadership has been, shall we say, less than inspiring lately." Ilera spun to face me, realization dawning in her eyes, a look of dawning horror. You've been buying up shares through shell companies? That's why the stock price kept falling. You were manipulating the market." "No," I corrected her calmly. "The stock price fell because you drove away our best talent, alienated our biggest clients, and failed to innovate. We just helped the market recognize your true value." "It doesn't matter," she said, but her voice wavered. "I still control 50%. You can't outvote me." "About that," Arthur said, pulling a sealed envelope from his briefcase. "Your father left certain instructions with the trust that holds the remaining 2% of company shares. Instructions that could only be revealed under specific circumstances." Ilera sank into a chair, her eyes wide with apprehension as Arthur began reading from the document. "In the event that either of my children attempts to forcibly remove the other from the company," Arthur read aloud, his voice resonating in the quiet room, "these shares are to be voted with the child who demonstrates true innovation and leadership." Arthur paused, looking directly at Ilera. "The trust has reviewed both children's actions. Ilera's hostile removal of Elias, followed by Elias's successful launch of groundbreaking technology through Phoenix Innovations, makes the decision clear." I stood up slowly, a sense of vindication washing over me. "The 2% votes with me," I announced, my voice strong and clear. "Combined with the shares we've acquired and our allied board members, that gives us effective control of Sterling Corporation." "No," Ilera whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Dad wouldn't." Dad knew exactly who you were, Alara, I said quietly, the years of unspoken tension finally surfacing. He knew you'd try something like this, eventually. That's why he left an insurance policy. The first vote, Jessica announced, her voice crisp and authoritative, is to remove Alara Vance from her position as CEO, effective immediately. You can't do this. Alara shot to her feet, her voice rising to a near scream. This is my company. Second vote, I continued as if she hadn't spoken, the words feeling strangely detached, is to approve the merger between Sterling Corp and Phoenix Innovations, with Elias Vance as CEO of the combined entity. All in favor? Arthur asked. Hands rose around the table, a silent, decisive affirmation. Alara watched helplessly as her empire crumbled before her eyes. The votes are recorded, Jessica stated formally. Alara, you'll need to clear out your office by the end of the day. And if I refuse, she spat, her eyes blazing with a mixture of rage and humiliation. Then I'll have security escort you out, I said calmly, the words a mirror image of her own from 3 months ago. Just like you did to me. She stared at me, tears of rage welling up in her eyes. I'm your brother. You stopped being my brother, I said, my voice soft but firm, the moment you chose power over family. I pressed the intercom on the table. Security, please escort Miss Vance to her office to collect her belongings. As Alara was led away, defeated and distraught, our mother burst into the boardroom, her face a mask of horror and disbelief. Elias, what have you done? How could you do this to your sister? I met her gaze steadily, the weight of years of unspoken resentment finally lifting. The same way you both did it to me, Mom, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. The difference is I did it legally and ethically, and I did it better. Over the next year, the merged company, now officially Sterling Phoenix Corp., flourished. My AI technology revolutionized the industry, just as I'd planned. Stock prices soared, clients who had left in droves returned, and innovation once again became the driving force behind the company. We weren't just recovering, we were thriving, reaching heights Sterling Corp had never even dreamed of under Alara's leadership. Alara tried to fight back, of course. Old habits die hard. She attempted lawsuits, leaked fabricated stories to the press, even tried to start a competing company with the few remaining loyalists she had. But without our father's name or money behind her, without the talented team she had alienated, she quickly discovered just how difficult it was to succeed on merit alone. Her ventures fizzled out, one after another. Our parents, naturally, took her side. Holiday dinners became a thing of the past. The family fractured beyond repair. But I didn't mind. I had built my own family now. A team of brilliant innovators, engineers, and business minds who valued creation over destruction, collaboration over cutthroat competition. They were the family I had chosen, the family who believed in my vision. 1 year to the day after the takeover, I sat in my office, the same office where Alara had once reigned, now transformed into a space that reflected my own style. Minimalist, functional, filled with natural light. A familiar figure appeared in my doorway. Mr. Vance, my assistant said, looking uncertain. Your sister is here. Alara stood behind him, looking different, humbler. The expensive designer clothes were gone, replaced by simpler, more practical attire. Her makeup was minimal, her face softer, more open. For a moment, I saw flashes of the sister I had grown up with before ambition had consumed her. Can we talk, Elias? She asked quietly, her voice hesitant. I studied her for a long moment, searching for any hint of the old manipulation, the old ruthlessness. But I saw none, only a weary vulnerability. I nodded. Close the door, Mark. She walked in and sat across from me, fidgeting with her hands, a stark contrast to the confident, almost arrogant woman who had sat in this very chair a year ago. I've been doing a lot of thinking this past year, she began, her voice low. About Dad. About the company. About what you built while I was busy trying to tear you down. She took a deep breath, her gaze meeting mine for the first time. And you were right, Elias. About everything. I remained silent, waiting. I wanted to control Dad's legacy so badly, she continued, her voice thick with emotion, that I forgot what that legacy was actually supposed to be about. It wasn't about power or control. It was about innovation, creation, building something meaningful. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I'm not asking for my job back, she said, shaking her head. I don't deserve it. But I've been developing some ideas of my own. Small stuff, compared to Phoenix, nothing like your AI system. But it's mine, and it's honest. She pulled a neatly bound business plan from her bag, sliding it across my desk. I'm not asking for money or support or anything from Sterling Phoenix. I wanted you to be the first to see it. I picked up the proposal, scanning the executive summary. It was a plan for a small tech solution aimed at helping local businesses streamline their operations. It was good, genuinely good, practical, well-researched, with a clear understanding of the target market's needs. The kind of thing that could actually help real people. You did this yourself? I asked, looking up at her. She nodded. No shortcuts. No relying on Dad's name. Just me, learning to code in my apartment, trying to build something real. I was quiet for a long moment, the years of pain and frustration swirling within me. I thought of all the times I had wished for her to understand, to see beyond the bottom line, to appreciate the true value of innovation, the passion that drove me. There's a small business incubator program starting next month, I said finally, breaking the silence. It was independent from Sterling Phoenix, but I mentored there sometimes, offering guidance and support to budding entrepreneurs. Submit your proposal. If it's accepted, you'll get seed funding and mentorship. Hope flickered in her eyes, a fragile spark in the depths of her regret. Really? On one condition. I held up a finger. You earn it. No special treatment. No family connections. Just your idea and your work ethic. She stood up, straightening her shoulders, a newfound determination in her posture. That's all I'm asking for, Elias. A fair chance to prove myself. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Ilara? She paused at the door, her hand on the doorknob. Dad would be proud, I said softly. Not of what happened before, but of what you're trying to do now. A small smile curved her lips, not the predatory smirk I remembered, but something softer, more genuine. Thanks, Elias. But I think he'd be prouder of you. After she left, I stood at my window, looking out at the city below, at the twin towers of Sterling Phoenix and the smaller, burgeoning skyline where both our dreams were now taking shape, separate yet somehow connected. Ilara had needed to lose everything, the company, her status, her sense of entitlement, to learn what real success meant, what true value looked like. And I had needed to lose my place in the family, to be cast out, to find my true strength, my own path. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemy. It's about building something so magnificent, so undeniable, that they are forced to confront their own failures, to change, just to keep up. And sometimes, if you're lucky, that change creates something better than revenge. It creates understanding. It creates the possibility, however faint, of healing. As for me, I kept Dad's old nameplate on my desk, right next to my own. A reminder that legacies aren't just inherited, they're built, piece by piece, innovation by innovation. And I was just getting started. Story continues. The months that followed Ilara's visit were a period of intense growth, both for Sterling Phoenix and for me. The integration of Phoenix Innovations technology was seamless, catapulting us to the forefront of the industry. Our competitors scrambled to catch up, but we were always one step ahead, fueled by a renewed sense of purpose and a team that was passionate about pushing boundaries. I immersed myself in the work, finding a deep sense of fulfillment in leading a company that prioritized innovation and ethical business practices. The long hours didn't feel like a chore. They felt like an investment in a future I was building, a future that honored my father's true legacy. Jessica Chin remained a close advisor and a formidable ally. Her strategic brilliance and shrewd business sense were invaluable as we navigated the complexities of rapid expansion. We often joked about our hostile takeover, acknowledging the irony of how Ilara's actions had inadvertently created the opportunity for us to build something far greater than Sterling Corp ever was. My relationship with my parents remained strained. They couldn't or wouldn't see beyond Alara's narrative of being unfairly ousted. They saw my success as a betrayal, a cruel twist of fate that had harmed their favored child. It hurt, of course. The absence of their support, their unwavering belief in Alara's version of events, left a hollow ache in my chest. But I had come to terms with it. My worth wasn't defined by their approval. It was defined by the impact I was making, by the company I was building, by the lives I was improving through our technology. I kept an eye on Alara's progress through the Business Incubator program. Arthur Harrison, who was also a mentor there, occasionally updated me. Her proposal had been accepted, and she was working diligently on her project. She was facing the same challenges every startup founder faces: securing funding, attracting talent, navigating the unpredictable world of entrepreneurship. But she was doing it herself, without the safety net of the family name or fortune. It was a difficult path, a humbling experience, but perhaps a necessary one. One afternoon, I received an unexpected email. It was from Alara. Subject: update. I hesitated before opening it. What did she want? Was this another attempt to manipulate me, to somehow worm her way back into the company? I took a deep breath and clicked it open. It wasn't a plea for help or a demand for money. It was a concise, professional update on her progress. She had successfully developed a beta version of her software, secured a small round of seed funding, and was preparing for a limited launch with a few local businesses. She detailed the challenges she was facing and the lessons she was learning. At the end, she simply wrote, "Just wanted to let you know I'm making progress. Thank you for the opportunity." I stared at the email for a long time. Thank you. It was a small word, but coming from Alara, it felt monumental. It was a sign, perhaps, that she was genuinely changing, that the difficult lessons of the past year had truly sunk in. I replied briefly, offering a few words of encouragement and wishing her luck with her launch. I didn't offer any assistance, financial or otherwise. She needed to do this on her own. She needed to build her own success, her own legacy. The launch of her small business software was modest but successful. The local businesses who used it reported significant improvements in efficiency. It wasn't revolutionary like Phoenix, but it was practical, reliable, and solved a real problem. It was good work. A few months later, I was invited to speak at the Business Incubator's graduation ceremony. As I sat on stage, looking out at the cohort of aspiring entrepreneurs, I saw Alara in the crowd. She looked different again, more confident, more at ease. There was a spark in her eyes that I hadn't seen in years, a genuine passion for her work. After the ceremony, she approached me, a hesitant smile on her face. "Elias," she said, her voice soft. "Alara," I replied, returning her smile. "I just wanted to thank you again," she said, her gaze steady, "for everything, for giving me the chance." "You gave yourself the chance, Alara," I said. "You did the work." She nodded, a genuine smile now. "It was hard, really hard, starting from scratch. No safety net." "I know," I said, "but you did it." "Yeah," she said, a hint of pride in her voice. "I did. And it feels good, Elias. Building something yourself, something real." We stood there for a moment in comfortable silence, the years of animosity and betrayal seeming to melt away, replaced by a fragile bridge of mutual respect. "How's Mom and Dad?" I asked, the question feeling both necessary and awkward. Alara's smile faded slightly. They're okay. Still not really understanding of everything." I nodded. "Some wounds run deep, and some people are unwilling or unable to heal them. Maybe someday," she said, her voice trailing off. "Maybe," I replied, not holding my breath. She shifted, looking a little uncertain. "Well, I should probably go. Lots to do. Busy building your empire?" I teased gently. She laughed, a light, genuine sound that surprised us both. Something like that. "A small empire, maybe. A really, really small one." "Everyone starts somewhere," I said. "Phoenix wasn't built in a day." "True," she conceded. She hesitated for a moment, then extended her hand. "Friends." I looked at her hand, then at her face. Friends. It was a loaded word, weighted with years of history, of betrayal, of pain. But as I looked into her eyes, I saw not the ruthless predator who had tried to destroy me, but a woman who had faced her failures, who was working to build something new, something better. I took her hand. Partners in progress, maybe, I said, a smile playing on my lips. She squeezed my hand. I can live with that. We parted ways, and as I watched her walk away, I felt a sense of lightness, a feeling that a heavy weight had been lifted. The bitterness, the anger, the need for revenge, it had all dissipated, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. I had won, yes, but I had won not just by taking back what was mine, but by building something new, by staying true to my own values, by proving that innovation and integrity could triumph over greed and ambition. Alara's journey was her own. She had to find her own way back from the path she had taken. But perhaps, just perhaps, the lessons she had learned, the humility she had gained, would lead her to a better place. And maybe, just maybe, someday we could truly be family again. Life at Sterling Phoenix continued its upward trajectory. We expanded into new markets, developed even more groundbreaking technologies, and attracted the brightest minds in the industry. I made sure to foster a culture of collaboration and creativity, a stark contrast to the fear-based environment Alara had cultivated. I often thought about my father. I hoped he would be proud of what I had accomplished, of the way I had honored his legacy not by clinging to the past, but by building a future that embodied his spirit of innovation and ethical leadership. His old nameplate on my desk served as a constant reminder of where I came from and where I was going. One evening, a few years later, I was working late at the office when my assistant buzzed me. "Mr. Vance," she said, "there are two people here to see you. A Mr. and Mrs. Vance. My parents. They hadn't been to my office, to Sterling Phoenix, since the takeover." I felt a jolt of surprise, followed by a familiar pang of apprehension. "What did they want?" "Send them in, Mark," I said, my voice steady. They walked in hesitantly, looking older, perhaps a little more fragile than I remembered. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed, my father's shoulders slumped. They sat down in the chairs opposite my desk, the silence stretching between us. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Elias, we need to talk." I waited, saying nothing. "We were wrong," my father said, his voice rough with emotion. "About everything. About Alara. About you." My mother reached across the desk, her hand trembling slightly. We saw how hard Alara struggled, how she had to build everything herself. And we saw what you've done here, Elias. What you've built. It's incredible. Tears streamed down my mother's face. We were so blinded by our own expectations, by our own biases. We didn't see the truth. My father nodded in agreement. "We should have supported you, Elias. We should have seen what Alara was doing. We were so proud of her ambition, we didn't see the cost." The dam of emotion I had held back for years finally broke. I felt a surge of pain, of anger, of longing for the family I had lost. But beneath it all, a fragile seed of hope began to sprout. It hurt, I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It hurt, Mom. Dad. Feeling like you didn't believe in me. Like you always favored Alara." "We know," my mother sobbed. "And we are so sorry, Elias. Can you ever forgive us?" I looked at them, at their tear-streaked faces, at the genuine remorse in their eyes. Forgiveness. It was a complex thing. It didn't erase the past, the pain, the betrayal. But maybe it could pave the way for a different future. "It will take time," I said, my voice soft. "A lot of time. But yes, I think we can try." My mother reached across the desk and took my hand, squeezing it tightly. My father nodded, a look of profound relief washing over his face. We talked for a long time that night, clearing the air, addressing the unspoken resentments, the years of misunderstanding. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of raw emotion, of lingering pain. But we talked. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were a family again, a wounded family, perhaps, but a family nonetheless. My relationship with Alara also slowly began to heal. Her small business thrived, and she gained a reputation as a dedicated and ethical entrepreneur. We would occasionally meet for coffee, talking about our respective companies, sharing advice and insights. The rivalry was gone, replaced by a quiet camaraderie, a shared understanding of the challenges and rewards of building something from the ground up. We never talked about the takeover directly, not in detail. It was a painful chapter we had both agreed, implicitly, to move past. But the lessons learned, the changes we had both undergone, were a constant, unspoken presence in our interactions. One day, Alara called me. Her voice was hesitant. "Elias, I was wondering, you know the business incubator? They're looking for a new lead mentor. And I was wondering if you would consider me." I was surprised. Alara, mentoring? But then I thought about her journey, about the struggles she had overcome, the lessons she had learned. She had a unique perspective, a valuable experience to share with aspiring entrepreneurs. "I think that's a great idea, Alara," I said. "You've got a lot to teach them. More than you know." She accepted the position and quickly became a respected and sought-after mentor. Her mentors gravitated towards her honesty, her resilience, her willingness to share both her successes and her failures. She had learned the hard way, and that made her a powerful teacher. My parents slowly re-entered my life. We started having dinner again, tentative at first, but gradually becoming more comfortable. The conversations were different now, more open, more honest. They still struggled to fully understand the complexities of the tech world, but they made an effort, asking questions, showing genuine interest in my work. One Sunday dinner, my mother looked at me, a soft smile on her face. "You know, Elias," she said, "your father and I were talking the other day about everything, and we realized you have so much of your father in you. His vision, his drive, but also his kindness, his integrity." My father nodded, tears in his eyes. "He would be so incredibly proud of you, son. So proud." I felt a lump form in my throat. Hearing those words from them, after all this time, it meant more than I could express. Life isn't a straight line. It's full of twists and turns, betrayals and second chances. My journey had been a painful one, marked by the sting of being cast out by my own family. But it had also been a journey of self-discovery, of resilience, of building something extraordinary from the ashes of betrayal. Alara and I would never go back to being the carefree siblings we once were. The scars of the past were too deep. But we had found a new way to relate, a way that was built on honesty, respect, and a shared understanding of the complexities of family and business. Sterling Phoenix continued to thrive, a testament to the power of innovation and ethical leadership. My father's legacy lived on, not just in the name of the company, but in the values we upheld, the culture we fostered, the impact we made on the world. And sometimes when I looked out of my office window at the city skyline, I would see the smaller building where Alara had her office, where she was building her own future, brick by brick. And I would smile, because I knew with a certainty that transcended the pain of the past, that we were both, finally, where we were meant to be. Building, innovating, and maybe, just maybe, healing. The integration of Phoenix Innovations into Sterling Corp., now Sterling Phoenix Corp., wasn't without its challenges, despite the technological synergy. Merging two distinct company cultures, even when one is essentially absorbing the other, requires careful navigation. There were former Sterling Corp employees who were resistant to the changes, clinging to the old ways. Whispers in the hallways about the Phoenix outsiders taking over. I addressed this head-on, holding town hall meetings, emphasizing our shared vision for the future, and ensuring that talented individuals from both sides were given opportunities to lead. It took time, patience, and a clear demonstration that merit, not past allegiances, was the only currency that mattered. My leadership style was a deliberate contrast to Alara's. Where she had been autocratic and driven by fear, I fostered an environment of collaboration, open communication, and mutual respect. I believed that the best ideas could come from anywhere in the company, not just from the top down. This approach paid off. Our teams felt empowered, creativity flourished, and we continued to innovate at a rapid pace. One of the most rewarding aspects of this new era was witnessing the impact of Phoenix. Our AI system wasn't just a theoretical breakthrough. It was a practical tool that was transforming how businesses operated, making them more efficient, more insightful, and ultimately more successful. Seeing the positive impact of our work, knowing that we were genuinely improving things for our clients, was a powerful motivator. It was a tangible demonstration that my father's legacy of innovation and ethical business practices was alive and well, thriving in the company he had built. My relationship with my parents, while improving, remained a delicate dance. There were still moments of awkwardness, of unspoken regrets. They were trying, I could see that. They would ask about the company, about Phoenix, about my work, and their questions felt genuine, no longer tinged with the veiled criticism or favoritism towards Alara that had marked our interactions for so long. Alara's transformation continued to be a source of quiet observation, and, I admit, a little surprise. She was excelling as a mentor at the business incubator, guiding aspiring entrepreneurs with a wisdom that only comes from firsthand experience, from the hard knocks she had taken. I heard stories from Arthur Harrison and others about her dedication, her insightful advice, her willingness to share both her successes and her failures. It was a stark contrast to the Alara who had sat in that boardroom, consumed by ambition and a ruthless pursuit of power. One day, I received an invitation to speak at the incubator's annual showcase event. It was a big deal for the program, a chance for the graduating cohort to present their ventures to potential investors and mentors. Alara was the keynote speaker. I hesitated for a moment when I saw her name on the program. Speaking on the same stage, after everything that had happened, it felt significant. But it also felt like a natural progression, a step forward in the slow, sometimes painful, process of healing. I accepted the invitation. The night of the showcase was electric. The auditorium was packed with entrepreneurs, investors, mentors, and members of the local business community. I gave my speech first, talking about the importance of innovation, resilience, and building a company with purpose. I spoke about the challenges I had faced without going into explicit detail about the family drama, focusing instead on the lessons learned and the strength gained from overcoming adversity. Then it was Alara's turn. As she walked onto the stage, a ripple of recognition went through the crowd. Many people in the business community knew who she was, knew about the very public unraveling of her time at Sterling Corporation. There was a palpable sense of anticipation, a silent question hanging in the air. What would she say? She began by talking about her own journey, not shying away from the difficulties, the failures, the hard lessons she had learned. She spoke with a raw honesty that was both surprising and deeply moving. She talked about being consumed by ambition, about losing sight of what truly mattered, about making choices she regretted. She didn't name names, didn't point fingers, but the story was clear to anyone who knew the history. She spoke about the importance of humility, of learning from mistakes, of finding your true passion. She talked about the joy of building something from scratch, something that had a real impact, something that was her own. She spoke with a passion and authenticity I had rarely seen from her before. By the end of her speech, the initial skepticism in the room had been replaced by a wave of respect. She received a standing ovation. As she walked off stage, she met my gaze for a brief moment. There was no triumphant smirk, no hint of the old rivalry. Only a quiet acknowledgement, a shared understanding. After the formal presentations, there was a networking reception. I found myself surrounded by people eager to talk about my speech, about Sterling Phoenix, about the future of tech. As I was talking, Alara approached me, a hesitant smile on her face. "Elias," she said, that was a really good speech." "Yours too, Alara," I replied. "You were incredibly brave up there." She shrugged slightly. It needed to be said. I needed to say it. We stood there for a moment, the noise of the reception swirling around us. It felt like we were on an island, just the two of us, separated from the crowd by the weight of our shared history. "It seems like you found your calling, Alara," I said. She smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "Yeah, maybe I have. Helping others build their dreams, it's surprisingly fulfilling." "It's important work," I said. "Good work. Coming from you," she said, her eyes sparkling with a hint of the old humor. "That means a lot." We talked for a while longer about her work at the incubator, about the challenges she faced, about the successes of her mints. It was easy, comfortable, a far cry from the tense, guarded conversations we had once had. Before she left, she paused. Elias, thank you. Again, for everything. For not completely shutting me out. We're family, Ilara. I said, the words feeling natural, true. However messy it gets, we're still family. She nodded, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. Yeah, we are. As the years passed, Sterling Phoenix continued to grow, expanding its reach globally. We acquired smaller companies, formed strategic partnerships, and remained at the forefront of AI innovation. I was fortunate to have an incredible team, dedicated, brilliant individuals who shared my vision and worked tirelessly to make it a reality. My relationship with my parents continued to deepen. The initial awkwardness faded, replaced by a quiet affection and mutual respect. They were proud of me, I knew that. They would beam when they saw me on the news or read about Sterling Phoenix's latest achievements. They even started attending industry events with me, sometimes their presence a quiet affirmation of their support. Ilara became a respected figure in the local business community, known for her integrity and her dedication to fostering entrepreneurship. Her work at the incubator helped launch dozens of successful startups, creating jobs and contributing to the local economy. She had found her own way to make a difference, to build her own legacy. We didn't see each other every day, or even every week. Our lives had taken different paths. Our professional worlds were distinct. But we stayed in touch, occasional phone calls, texts, meeting up for coffee when our schedules aligned. The rivalry was gone, replaced by a quiet bond, a shared understanding of the unique challenges and triumphs of being a Vance, of carrying the weight of our father's legacy in our own ways. There were still moments when the past would resurface, a fleeting memory, a twinge of pain. The boardroom confrontation, the feeling of betrayal, the long, lonely months of building Phoenix in secret. But those moments became less frequent, less sharp, softened by time and by the healing process that had taken place. Sterling Phoenix faced new challenges, of course. The tech industry is constantly evolving, and staying ahead requires constant innovation and adaptation. There were fierce competitors, economic downturns, unforeseen crises. But we faced them together as a team, stronger and more resilient because of the trials we had overcome. One evening, as I was leaving the office, my father called. His voice sounded strained. Elias, he said, there's been an accident. Ilara, she's been in a car accident. My heart stopped. The past, the rivalry, the slow building reconciliation, it all vanished in an instant, replaced by a primal fear for my sister, for the woman who, despite everything, was still my family. I rushed to the hospital, my parents already there, their faces pale and drawn. Ilara was in surgery, her condition serious. We sat in the waiting room for hours, a silent, anxious trio, united by our fear for the person we all loved, however complicated our relationships had been. It was a long, agonizing night. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but there were risks, uncertainties. As we sat there, the years of distance, the unspoken resentments, the pain of the past seemed to dissolve. All that mattered was Ilara, her life hanging in the balance. My parents talked about her childhood, about funny stories, about the dreams she had had before ambition had consumed her. I shared memories, too, of the sister who had taught me how to ride a bike, who had defended me from bullies in the schoolyard, who had shared my excitement for our father's company. In that sterile, fluorescent-lit waiting room, stripped of our titles, our successes, our past grievances, we were just a family waiting, hoping, praying for one of our own. Ilara made it through the surgery, but the recovery would be long and difficult. She had sustained serious injuries, requiring extensive rehabilitation. I visited her regularly, sitting by her bedside, talking, reading to her, sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. She was weak. Her usual energy diminished, but the spark in her eyes was still there. One afternoon, as I was getting ready to leave, She reached out and took my hand. Elias, she whispered, her voice raspy. Thank you for being here. Of course, Alara, I said, squeezing her hand. Always. She smiled, a weak but genuine smile. We really messed things up, didn't we? Back then. We did, I admitted, a wave of sadness washing over me. I'm sorry, Elias, she said, tears welling up in her eyes. For everything. For being so awful. I'm sorry too, Alara, I said, my own voice thick with emotion. I should have tried harder to understand. To reach you. We sat there holding hands, tears streaming down both our faces. It wasn't a magical erasure of the past, but it was a moment of profound connection, of shared vulnerability, of forgiveness freely given and received. Her recovery was a slow, arduous process, but Alara, with her characteristic determination, faced it head on. She worked tirelessly with her physical therapist, pushing herself to regain her strength and mobility. Her experience at the incubator, the resilience she had developed, served her well. As she recovered, she started thinking about her future, about her work at the incubator, about the entrepreneurs who depended on her guidance. She was eager to get back to it, to continue building her own legacy. I offered her support, resources, anything she needed to aid her recovery and get back on her feet. She accepted, not with the old entitlement, but with genuine gratitude. Life, as it always does, moved forward. Alara fully recovered and returned to her work at the incubator, more passionate and dedicated than ever. My parents continued to be a presence in my life, their support a quiet comfort. And Sterling Phoenix continued its journey of innovation and growth. The scars of the past remained, a reminder of the pain and the lessons learned. But they were no longer open wounds. They were healed, faded, a part of our story, but not the whole story. One day, while going through some old boxes at my parents' house, we found a collection of our father's journals. They were filled with his thoughts on the business, his dreams for the future, his hopes for us, his children. Reading his words, seeing his vision laid out in his own hand, was a powerful experience. He wrote about the importance of innovation, yes, but also about the importance of family, of integrity, of building a company that not only succeeded financially, but also made a positive impact on the world. He wrote about his hopes that Alara and I would work together, complementing each other's strengths, carrying on his legacy as a united front. Reading those words, knowing how far we had strayed from his vision, but also seeing how, in our own ways, we were now working to honor it, brought a mix of sadness and a quiet sense of peace. We shared the journals with Alara, and she too was deeply moved. It was a reminder of what we had lost, but also a reaffirmation of what we were now striving to build. The years continued to pass. Sterling Phoenix became a global leader in AI, our technology transforming industries and improving lives around the world. I was proud of what we had accomplished, proud of the company we had built, proud of the team that had made it all possible. Alara's work at the incubator continued to flourish. She became a nationally recognized figure in the entrepreneurship world, speaking at conferences, publishing articles, inspiring a new generation of innovators. She had found her own path to success, a path that was authentic and deeply fulfilling. My parents, now elderly, found comfort in the quiet rhythm of their lives, surrounded by the love and attention of their children, a family reunited, however imperfectly. One evening, as I sat in my office looking out at the city lights, a sense of profound gratitude washed over me. It had been a long, difficult journey filled with betrayal, pain, and uncertainty. But it had also been a journey of resilience, of growth, of healing. I had lost a company, but I had built an empire. I had lost a sister, but I had found a family again. I had been knocked down, but I had risen stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. My father's legacy was secure, not just in the success of Sterling Phoenix, but in the values we upheld, the impact we made, and the healing that had taken place within our family. The road ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, new obstacles to overcome. But I wasn't afraid. I had faced down betrayal, built an empire from scratch, and navigated the complex waters of family reconciliation. I was ready for whatever came next. And I knew with a quiet certainty that no matter what the future held, I wouldn't be facing it alone. I had my team, my family, and the unwavering belief that innovation, integrity, and resilience could overcome anything. Years after the dust settled from the Sterling Corp takeover and the slow, careful rebuilding of family ties, Sterling Phoenix Corp stood as a titan in the tech world. Our AI systems were integrated into global infrastructure, from smart cities to healthcare diagnostics. We weren't just a company, we were a force shaping the future. My life had found a rhythm, the demanding pace of leading a multinational corporation, balanced with quiet moments with my parents and the occasional, increasingly comfortable, catch-up with AITA. But in the world of cutting-edge technology, stability is a fleeting illusion. The next challenge always lurks just beyond the horizon. It started subtly. Whispers from our sales teams about a new competitor, Aegis Dynamics. They seemed to appear out of nowhere, a well-funded, highly secretive startup that was suddenly winning major contracts we considered locks. Their technology was rumored to be remarkably advanced, eerily similar to our own core AI, Phoenix, in its capabilities, but with an unsettling edge. Initially, we weren't overly concerned. The tech landscape is always shifting, and new players emerge constantly. We were confident in our lead, our talent, our established client base. But the whispers grew louder, more persistent. Aegis wasn't just competing, they were aggressive, undercutting our prices, poaching key talent with exorbitant offers, and their products seemed to evolve at an impossible pace. Then came the first real blow. A major government contract, one we had been pursuing for years and were on the verge of securing, was awarded to Aegis Dynamics. The official reason cited was superior technology and accelerated development timeline. Superior technology? Accelerated timeline? It didn't make sense. Phoenix was the result of years of dedicated research and development by the brightest minds in the field. An accelerated timeline for a technology of this complexity was almost impossible. I convened an emergency meeting with my senior leadership team. The mood was grim. We ran diagnostics, analyzed market reports, even hired external cybersecurity experts to investigate potential leaks. Nothing. Aegis was a ghost, leaving no digital footprint beyond their official business. Their AI, it's too similar, Elias, Anya Sharma said, her brow furrowed with concern. Almost like they had access to our early development phases. A chill ran down my spine. Early development phases. The time when Phoenix was just a prototype, a secret project in my private lab at Sterling Corporation. A secret only a handful of people knew about. And one person who had actively tried to prove it didn't exist. No, I pushed the thought away. AITA. After everything, the accident, the reconciliation, her work at the incubator, it couldn't be her. But the unsettling similarities, the speed of Aegis's development, it gnawed at me. Days turned into weeks, and the situation worsened. Aegis Dynamics continued their relentless ascent, winning more contracts, their technology seemingly evolving in parallel with ours. It was like a shadow company, mirroring our every move. Our stock price, which had soared since the merger, began to falter. Investors were getting nervous. The board, while supportive, was asking pointed questions. The pressure was mounting. One evening, overwhelmed and exhausted, I found myself driving aimlessly. I ended up outside the business incubator where AITA worked. The lights were on, a hive of activity even late at night. On impulse, I parked the car and went inside. The receptionist, a bright-eyed young woman who knew AITA, smiled warmly. "Mr. Vance, it's late. Is Miss Vance expecting you?" "No," I said. "Just wanted to stop by." "Is she here?" "She is, in the main workshop," the receptionist replied. "She's been working late with the new cohort." I walked towards the workshop, the familiar scent of coffee and the low hum of computers filling the air. I found AITA hunched over a workbench, surrounded by a group of eager entrepreneurs, explaining the intricacies of pitching to investors. She looked focused, passionate, completely in her element. She saw me and her eyes widened slightly in surprise. "Elias? What are you doing here?" The entrepreneurs looked at me with curiosity. They knew who I was, of course. "The CEO of Sterling Phoenix. Just needed to see you," I said, the words feeling inadequate. She excused herself from the group and walked over to me, her expression shifting from surprise to concern. What's wrong? You look rattled. I hesitated, the weight of the past, the lingering suspicion, making the words catch in my throat. How could I even voice the thought that was forming in my mind? It's Aegis dynamics, I finally said, keeping my voice low. They're hurting us, Alara. Badly. She frowned. She clearly knew the name. The tech world was small, and Aegis's rise hadn't gone unnoticed. Their technology, I continued, choosing my words carefully. It's too similar to Phoenix. The core architecture, the underlying principles, it's almost identical to the early prototype. Alara's expression didn't change, but I saw a subtle flicker in her eyes, a tightening of her jaw. You think? She began, her voice low. I didn't answer directly. I couldn't. The accusation, even implied, felt too heavy. I don't know what to think, Alara, I said, running a hand through my hair. It doesn't make sense. Unless someone had access to the early designs. Someone who knew Phoenix inside and out. The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken history. The air in the workshop suddenly felt heavy, charged with the ghosts of the past. Elias, she said finally, her voice barely audible. I had nothing to do with this. I swear. I looked into her eyes, searching for any hint of deception, any flicker of the old Alara. But all I saw was sincerity and a flicker of hurt. I want to believe you, I said, the words difficult to force out. Then believe me, she pleaded, her voice gaining a little strength. I've worked too hard to build this, Elias. This, she gestured around the workshop, at the eager faces of the entrepreneurs. This is my legacy now. Not tearing down what you built. Her sincerity chipped away at the wall of suspicion I had built around myself. But the facts remained. Aegis's technology was too similar. Do you know anything about them? I asked. Aegis? Their funding? Their leadership? She shook her head. Only what everyone else knows. They're secretive. Came out of nowhere. Well funded, though. That much is clear. I sighed. It was a dead end. A frustrating, emotionally charged dead end. I should go, I said, feeling the familiar weight of the world settle back onto my shoulders. Elias, she said, stopping me as I turned to leave. If there's anything I can do to help, I will, whatever it takes. I looked at her, at the genuine offer in her eyes. It was another U-turn, a testament to how much she had changed. Thank you, Alara, I said, the word soft. I'll keep that in mind. I left the incubator, the knot in my stomach no smaller, but a new, unsettling thought forming in my mind. If Alara wasn't behind Aegis, who was, and how did they get their hands on technology so similar to Phoenix? The pressure on Sterling Phoenix intensified. Aegis Dynamics seemed unstoppable. They launched a series of aggressive marketing campaigns, painting us as an old, stagnant company, while positioning themselves as the future. Our stock continued its downward trend. The board's questions became less pointed and more demanding. Whispers of a leadership change began to circulate. My position, the position I had fought so hard to regain, was suddenly precarious. Jessica Chun, ever the pragmatist, flew in to meet with me. Her usual cool demeanor was tinged with concern. This is bad, Elias, she said, getting straight to the point. Aegis is moving too fast. It's almost like they know our playbook. That's what I thought, I said, sharing my suspicions about the similarities to the early Phoenix prototype. Jessica listened intently, her eyes sharp and assessing. Access to early designs, that's a serious security breach. If it's not Alara, who else knew about it? I finished her sentence. Only the core RD team, and they're all with us now. They wouldn't betray us, unless, Jessica paused, a flicker of an idea in her eyes. Unless someone outside the team had access, someone who might have seen the prototype, understood its potential, and waited for the right moment. My mind raced. Who else could have seen it? Who else had been in a position to understand the significance of what I was building? Then it hit me, a name I hadn't thought of in years. A former board member, a close friend of our father's, who had been one of the few who had supported me initially, but had later sided with AITA during the takeover. Arthur Harrison. No, it couldn't be Arthur. He had seemed so supportive during the takeover, warning me about AITA's plans. He had even helped me with the trust documents. But the trust documents, he was the one who had revealed the existence of the 2% of shares, the shares that had ultimately tipped the scales in my favor. He had access to our father's most confidential papers, including, potentially, notes or early documentation about Phoenix. The thought was a betrayal in itself, a sickening twist in the narrative I had constructed. Arthur, the man who had seemed like an ally, a link to my father's past, could he be the architect of my potential downfall? I shared my suspicion with Jessica. She listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. Arthur Harrison, she mused when I finished. He was on the board for years, had full access, and he was close to your father. He would have known about any confidential projects. But why? I asked, the question echoing the turmoil in my mind. He seemed to support me. Support can be a complicated thing, Elias, Jessica said, her voice low. Maybe he resented the way things played out. Maybe he felt he was owed something. Or maybe he was playing a longer game all along. The possibility was chilling. A carefully constructed betrayal, years in the making. We began to investigate Arthur Harrison discreetly. Jessica's network was extensive, reaching into corners of the business world I had never even known existed. We dug into his finances, his recent activities, his connections. The initial findings were inconclusive. Arthur's life appeared to be that of a retired, respectable businessman. He was involved in various charities, sat on a few nonprofit boards, and seemed to be enjoying a quiet retirement. But as we dug deeper, a pattern began to emerge. A series of offshore accounts, transactions that were carefully disguised, but ultimately traceable. Large sums of money flowing into these accounts over the past year. Money that coincided with the emergence of Aegis Dynamics. The pieces began to fall into place, forming a picture of calculated deception. Arthur had access to the early Phoenix designs through his connection to my father and his position on the board. He had seen the potential, waited for the opportune moment, the chaos of the takeover, and then quietly, methodically, he had used that knowledge to build his own rival company. The betrayal cut deeper than Alara's ever had. Hers had been born of ambition and a distorted sense of entitlement. Arthur seemed colder, more deliberate, a calculated strike from someone I had trusted, someone who had seemed like family. The U-turn was complete. My perceived ally was my enemy, and the sister I had once battled was, perhaps, the only person who could truly understand the depth of the betrayal I was facing. I knew what I had to do. I had to confront Arthur. Arranging a meeting with a man who is actively trying to destroy your company, while keeping your suspicions hidden, requires a delicate touch. I invited him to lunch, a casual setting, feigning a desire to catch up and seek his advice on the current challenges facing Sterling Phoenix. He accepted, his voice cordial, no hint of the deception I now suspected. We met at a quiet restaurant downtown. Arthur looked every bit the distinguished, retired businessman. He smiled warmly, shaking my hand, his eyes holding a familiar, grandfatherly twinkle. "Elias," he said, settling into his seat. "It's good to see you. You've built quite an empire here. Your father would be proud." The words felt like a punch to the gut. He spoke of pride and legacy while actively working to dismantle everything I had built. We made small talk for a while, discussing the market, the challenges of innovation, the difficulty of staying ahead in the tech race. I listened, playing along, waiting for the right moment. Then, casually, I brought up Aegis Dynamics. "We're facing some tough competition, Arthur," I said, my voice light. "This new company, Aegis, they've come out of nowhere, and their technology is remarkably advanced." Arthur nodded, his expression one of thoughtful concern. "Yes, I've heard about them. Impressive, certainly. The tech world moves fast, Elias. Always a new disruptor on the horizon." "It's more than just disruption, Arthur," I said, leaning forward slightly, lowering my voice. "Their core AI. It's almost identical to Phoenix. The early prototype." I watched his face carefully. There was a hesitation, a flicker in his eyes that was gone as quickly as it appeared. Is that so? He said, his voice calm, too calm. Remarkable coincidence, I'm sure. Great minds think alike, as they say. Or, I said, my voice hardening slightly. Someone had access to confidential information. The mask of the genial retiree slipped for just a second. A flash of something cold, calculating, crossed his face. But then it was gone, replaced by a look of feigned concern. Elias, he said, his voice taking on a tone of gentle admonishment. Surely you're not suggesting that someone you knew, someone you trusted, would betray you? Betrayal comes in many forms, Arthur, I said, my gaze steady, meeting his directly. Sometimes it's the people you least expect. The air crackled with unspoken tension. We both knew what I was implying. He leaned back in his chair, a faint smile playing on his lips. It wasn't the warm, grandfatherly smile I remembered. It was a predator's smile. You always were a clever boy, Elias, he said, his voice low. Just like your father. Saw things others missed. He didn't admit it directly, not in words. But the look in his eyes, the shift in his demeanor, the subtle change in his voice, it was confirmation. Arthur Harrison was Aegis Dynamics. Why, Arthur? I asked, the pain of the betrayal piercing through my strategic facade. Why do this? After everything. He shrugged, a gesture of casual indifference that felt like a slap in the face. Business, Elias. Just business. I saw an opportunity. Your father, he should have recognized my contributions. He built this company. Yes, but I was there every step of the way. And when she took over, and then things didn't go as I had anticipated. I simply corrected the situation. By stealing my life's work and trying to destroy the company I had fought to save. This is about more than business, Arthur, I said, my voice laced with emotion. This is about betrayal. About trust. He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Trust is a luxury, Elias. In this world, loyalty is bought, not earned. The cynical words, coming from a man I had once respected, a man who had been a close friend of my father's, were deeply unsettling. What happens now, Arthur? I asked the question a challenge. He smiled again, that same cold, predatory smile. That, Elias, depends on you. Aegis is strong, very strong. We have your technology, we have the funding, and we have momentum. You could fight us, of course. It would be a long, messy, expensive battle. It might even destroy both our companies. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Or we could come to an arrangement, a partnership, merge our companies, share the profits. You get to keep your empire, and I get the recognition and the wealth I deserve. A partnership with the man who had stolen my technology and tried to ruin me. It was an audacious proposal, a breathtaking display of arrogance. You stole from me, Arthur, I said, my voice cold. You betrayed my trust. You betrayed my father's trust. Let's not get sentimental, Elias, he said, his tone dismissive. This is business, pure and simple. Think about it. A merger would be mutually beneficial. We could dominate the market. He was right in a twisted way. A merger of Sterling Phoenix and Aegis Dynamics would create a technology powerhouse, unlike anything the world had ever seen. But the thought of partnering with Arthur, of legitimizing his theft, of sharing the fruits of my labor with the man who had tried to destroy me, it was repulsive. I won't partner with you, Arthur, I said, my voice firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Not now, not ever. His smile faded, replaced by a hard, cold stare. A pity, Elias. I had hoped you would be more pragmatic. This is a mistake. You can't stop me. Maybe not alone, I said, thinking of Jessica, of my team, and of the unexpected ally who might just hold a key to unraveling Arthur's carefully constructed plan. But I'm not alone. I stood up, leaving the untouched food on the table. Enjoy your lunch, Arthur, I said. It might be your last peaceful meal for a while. I walked out of the restaurant, the weight of the confrontation settling heavily on my shoulders. The enemy was identified, the betrayal confirmed. But the fight was far from over. Arthur Harrison was a formidable opponent, cunning, ruthless, and now I knew capable of a level of deception I had underestimated. I needed a plan that would expose Arthur, protect Sterling Phoenix, and ensure that justice, in the truest sense, was served. And I had a feeling, a growing certainty, that this plan might just require an unlikely alliance. An alliance with the sister who had once been my greatest rival, but who now, perhaps, held the key to my survival. The first call I made was to Jessica Chun, briefing her on the confrontation with Arthur. She listened intently, her responses brief and to the point. Harrison. I should have considered him more closely, she admitted, a rare hint of self-reproach in her voice. He was always a slippery character, even back in your father's day. Played the loyal advisor, but he had his own agenda. He's proposing a merger, I told her. Says we can't stop him. Arrogant, Jessica scoffed. But not entirely wrong. His access to the early Phoenix designs gives him a significant advantage. Proving he stole them, that will be difficult. How difficult? He's smart, Elias, she said. He would have covered his tracks. Offshore accounts, shell companies, it will be a complicated legal battle. And while we're tied up in court, Aegis will continue to chip away at our market share. The reality of the situation was grim. A protracted legal fight could cripple Sterling Phoenix, regardless of the outcome. There has to be another way, I said, thinking aloud. Perhaps, Jessica replied, a thoughtful pause on her end. Does Ilara still have contacts within Sterling Corp? People who were loyal to you? Some, I said, surprised by the question. Why? If Harrison accessed the early Phoenix designs while he was still on the board, Jessica explained, there might be a paper trail. Meeting logs, internal communications, access records to secure servers, something he overlooked, something that could link him directly to the theft. A paper trail. During the chaos of the takeover, with Ilara dismantling my department and consolidating her power, I had been so focused on building Phoenix and preparing for my comeback that I hadn't considered the possibility of a breach within Sterling Corp itself. But accessing those records now, I began, would be difficult through official channels, Jessica finished. But Ilara, she knows she knows who to talk to, who might still be loyal, or at least willing to look the other way for the right incentive. The thought of involving Ilara, of asking her to navigate the corporate labyrinth of the company that had once been our battleground, felt like another significant U-turn. But Jessica was right. She had connections, a unique understanding of the internal workings of the old Sterling Corp, knowledge that could be invaluable. I hesitated for a moment, the memories of our past conflict flashing through my mind. Could I trust her with something this critical? Had our reconciliation truly gone deep enough? It's a risk, Elias, Jessica said, sensing my hesitation. But we're running out of options. If we can find concrete proof of his theft, we can cripple Aegis before they cripple us. I made the second difficult call of the day. To Ilara. She answered on the first ring, her voice bright. Elias? Everything okay? Ilara, I said, my voice serious. I need your help. With Aegis dynamics. There was a pause on the other end. Okay, she said finally, her voice losing its lightness. What's going on? I explained the situation, the confrontation with Arthur, my suspicion that he was behind Aegis, and Jessica's idea about the paper trail within the old Sterling Corp. She listened intently, asking sharp, insightful questions. It was a reminder of the intelligence and business acumen she possessed, qualities that had been warped by ambition in the past, but were now, perhaps, being channeled into something positive. Arthur Harrison, she repeated when I finished, her voice thoughtful. I had my suspicions about him during the takeover. He seemed too eager to help me consolidate power. Too quick to dismiss your work. You think he was playing you? I asked. Maybe, she said. Or maybe he was just opportunistic. Saw a chance to get rid of you and then capitalize on the chaos. Jessica thinks there might be a paper trail within the old Sterling Corp, I said. Access logs, internal emails, something that could link him to the early Phoenix designs. Another pause. I could almost hear her mind working. It won't be easy, Elias, she said finally. The system was secure, but not impenetrable. And after everything that happened, records might have been misplaced. or deliberately destroyed. Can you do it, Alara? I asked, the question hanging in the air. Can you find it? She was silent for a long moment. I could feel the weight of the past, the history of our conflict pressing down on us. This wasn't just about a company anymore. It was about vindication, about exposing a deeper betrayal, and about whether the fragile bridge of reconciliation we had built could withstand this new test. Yes, Elias, she said, her voice low but firm. I can do it. For Dad, for his legacy, and for us. The for us hung in the air, a quiet acknowledgement of the complex, messy, but ultimately enduring bond we shared. And so began a new phase of our story, a clandestine operation conducted in the shadows of the corporate world. Alara, leveraging her knowledge of the old Sterling Corp systems and her remaining contacts, began her search for the elusive paper trail. I, meanwhile, continued to lead Sterling Phoenix, outwardly projecting confidence while inwardly bracing for the next move from Arthur Harrison and Aegis Dynamics. The pressure on Sterling Phoenix didn't abate. Aegis continued to win contracts, their technology advancing at an alarming rate. It felt like a race against time. Alara's search was painstaking. The old Sterling Corp's digital archives were a labyrinth, poorly organized and filled with corrupted files. It was clear that someone had attempted to cover their tracks. But Alara was persistent, her determination fueled by a desire to right a wrong that went beyond just business. Weeks turned into months. The search yielded fragmented clues, tantalizing hints, but nothing conclusive. Doubt began to creep in. Had we been wrong about Arthur? Was there another explanation for Aegis's uncanny technology? Just as despair was beginning to set in, Alara called me, her voice breathless. Elias, I think I found something.